Anthony Nelson, Dean of the College of Business here at Bowie State University. I'd like to welcome you to this President's Forum on behalf of the Sesquicentennial Planning Committee. The forum is part of our Sesquicentennial celebration. Bowie State University has been delivering on the promise of opportunity for 150 years. And this HBCU President's Forum is not only for BSU, but also for other HBCUs to continue delivering on that promise for many more years to come. Here to bring you greetings on behalf of the student body is our Student Government Association President, Ms. Milan Mobley. Milan.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
President Burnham, First Lady Burnham, distinguished members of the Cabinet, alumni, faculty and staff, and our Bowie State University student body. I am Milan Mobley, Student Government Association President, 2014-2015. I must say, it's so inspiring to stand here today in front of so many educators. Just to think that we're celebrating our 150th year anniversary, and 150 years ago, we weren't even allowed to learn how to read. We, the students, appreciate each and every one of your contributions to education, leadership, and continuing guidance. It is my pleasure to welcome you here and thank you for coming to the HBCU President's Forum. I hope you all enjoy. Thank you.
And now to bring you greetings and to introduce our distinguished panelists is Bowie State University's president, who has been president for the last 9 years, Dr. Mickey L. Burnham.
Thank you, Dean Nelson. Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon.
I am delighted to add my words of welcome to you to this afternoon's forum, which is titled Leading HBCUs into the Future. As has been mentioned, Bowie State University this year is celebrating its sesquicentennial, 150 years delivering the promise of education to the citizens of the state of Maryland and beyond. The Planning Committee thought that this event would be a good activity for an important part of our celebration, which will be a year-long celebration. We are celebrating a glorious past, 150 years. But we must live in the present, and we must plan for the future and prepare for the future. Many higher education institutions are in great stress today. Many HBCUs in particular are in great stress. In fact, it would not be too great an exaggeration to say that the HBCU community as a whole is in great stress. I could name a few that I'm sure you are all aware of that are of great concern to all of us in the HBCU community. I won't name them, but you know that there are institutions facing great trials and challenges. So the question before us is, what must we do in the present? The we includes certainly alumni, faculty, staff. It includes students, and it includes, I think, all people who care about the future of our communities, our states, our nation, and indeed the world. So the question is, what must we do to assure the future of institutions that mean so much to our country, to our world, and its future? And how should Bowie State University and institutions like Bowie State University prepare for the future? These are the questions that I hope will underlie the responses that our distinguished panel will give as you ask those questions in the various forms that have been provided. We are indeed privileged to have a distinguished panel of current and past HBCU presidents to discuss these issues and to answer your questions. Each one of them has a rich and broad experience in higher education, as well as specific experience in HBCUs. You have their abbreviated bios in the program, but I want to add just a bit to what has been printed there. I'm proud to say, first off, that these panelists are all friends of mine. I have known them for many years, and I have admired their work. They bring to leadership great vision, energy, wisdom, and commitment. I'll begin. I'm told that when I introduce them, they are to come and take their seats here. They didn't tell me what order to do this in, so I'll do it in my own order. Starting with Dr. Mary Sias Evans. As you can see in the program, Dr. Evans served for 10 years as president of Kentucky State University. Prior to that, she served as senior vice president for student affairs and external relations at the University of Texas, Dallas. She's a proud graduate of Tougaloo College in Tougaloo, Mississippi, and she has been a highly valued and highly respected colleague in American higher education for a number of years. An indication of that is the fact that she was selected and elected to serve as as chairman of the board for 2 of the 6 presidential associations headquartered in Washington, D.C., one of which was Hbcu, the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. The other was Hbcu, the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities. So colleagues from those organizations who served on the board elected her to serve as president, and I think part of her service as chairman of those 2 boards even overlapped. But that's an indication of the respect that she has earned and garners in American higher education. Dr. Sias. Next, I introduce the president of Bennett College, President Rosalind Fuse Hall. President Fuse Hall is a graduate of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and she earned a Juris Doctorate from the Rutgers School of Law. She has worked at a number of different institutions: St. Lawrence University, UNC Chapel Hill. She worked on the UNC, the University of North Carolina Board of Governors, where she was corporate secretary for that governing board for the University of North Carolina system. She worked in administrative positions at North Carolina Central University, Florida A&M University, and now she currently serves as president of Bennett College, one of only 2 women's colleges for African American women in the country. President Rosalind Fuse Hall. Next, I am pleased to introduce Dr. Frank Pogue. Dr. Pogue is a proud graduate of Alabama State University. He earned his master's degree from Atlanta University and his PhD from the University of Pittsburgh. He has served in a number of institutions, but I'll begin with his service in several positions at the State University of New York, Albany, SUNY Albany. From there, he went on to serve as Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Special Programs for the SUNY system. And from the SUNY system, he was picked to serve as president of Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania. He served there as 11 years. Distinguished president, great record, so much so that they named a building after him and Mrs. Pogue upon their retirement from that institution. And so Dr. Pogue is one of my colleagues who I fondly say has failed retirement, because he didn't last 6 months before he was tapped to go to Chicago State University to serve as interim president while they did a search for a permanent president there. He served for a year there, as I recall, and then retired again. This time he didn't last 3 months before he was called to go to Grambling State University to serve for a year while they did a search. I think 6 months into that search, they liked the job that he was doing, they recognized the quality of leader that he is, and they asked him to take the job permanently. His wife was kind enough to allow him to sign on for another 4 years, and so Dr. Pogue served for 5 years as president of Grambling State University in Louisiana. And then he retired one more time. This time, he didn't last 6 weeks. Before Cheney University in Pennsylvania called him to serve as interim president while they do a search. And so all of that speaks volumes about his commitment not just to higher education, but his commitment to HBCUs in particular, and I think that goes back to his early days at Alabama State. So I'm very pleased and delighted to have Dr. Frank Pogue to be a member of this distinguished panel. Dr. George Cooper is the 4th member of the panel today. Dr. Cooper currently serves as the executive director of the White House Initiative on Historically Black Colleges and Universities. Dr. Cooper has a distinguished record in higher education as well, has experience at various institutions. He served as president, I believe, for 4 years at South Carolina State University in South Carolina. Before that, I know that he served for a while, I don't know how long, at Tuskegee University. And in his position as executive director of the White House Initiative, he gets to work with the Board of Presidential Advisors, and so he works with presidents from HBCUs from both the private and the public sector. He is a confidant and a colleague and a person that many of us call upon for various things from time to time. His wisdom and experience are just invaluable. So please join me in welcoming Dr. George Cooper and all of the members of this distinguished panel. And finally, I will introduce our moderator for this session, Mr. David Pluvios. He is executive editor, editorial team leader at Diverse Issues in Higher Education. He researches, writes, and speaks across the country on education issues. He holds a bachelor's degree in English from Tufts University, and he told me earlier at lunch today that he took a course or two at Bowie State University. Well, that certainly validates whatever education he has. I had the pleasure of meeting him when I participated in a similar presidential panel at Virginia Union University in November. For this year, they too are celebrating their sesquicentennial. And he did such a great job there. I said if we can get him, he would be just the right person to moderate our panel. And he will have an even better time here at Bowie State than he did at that institution. So David, without further ado, welcome. Thank you.
Dr. Burnham, thank you so much for your gracious invitation. It is so wonderful to be here representing diverse issues in higher education. As all of you may know, HBCUs are one of our core constituencies, and so it's a great pleasure and an honor to be here. I'd like to thank the great Bowie State University for this invitation. We have a powerful forum assembled here today. I believe we are in for a real treat. I had the opportunity to speak to your distinguished Dean of Business about the motto here, delivering on the promise of opportunity. And this forum promises to give us great insight into the critical nature of the HBCU. In addition to taking a few classes here at Bowie State, I also had the opportunity to work with some of your fine trio students at this institution. And that experience just reminded me about how critical the work that you are doing here at Bowie State and our other HBCUs. Without them, there's so many of our students, I've heard from them directly, they wouldn't know what they would do. So thank you so much for this invitation. And I'd like to just go ahead and get started. We don't have much time, but more time than we had in our last session, Dr. Burnham. So I'm very grateful for the additional time. And I want to just get right into the questioning. Each of our distinguished presidents in advance had individual questions that they were asked. And I'm going to actually ask Dr. Sias to begin. She is going to kick us off with a question about the data. Much of us here have been exposed to lots of information, lots of reports, lots of assaults on the HBCU, both in reputation, both when it comes to appropriation. But I felt it critical, talking with the team here, to have Dr. Sias lay out what is the data telling us about the value that the HBCU is bringing when it comes to educating the most underprepared and underprivileged students in the United States.
Ready?
Please.
Can you hear? Is the microphone on? Yeah. Let's get out of the way before we go any further this question that all of us have heard. Are HBCUs still viable?
Amen.
The answer absolutely is yes. I always thought that was a dumb question because if HBCUs didn't exist, we would have to invent them to do the work that is being done at Bowie and other institutions across this country. HBCUs, both public and private, were established to educate the children of slaves and later a broader population of African Americans. And as it turns out, our doors have almost always been open to everyone who saw the benefit of coming to our institutions. The numbers change, they go up and down, but I'm going to give you some general numbers about where we are and what happens. Because without HBCUs as our vehicle, there was no system in place for educating African Americans prior to the Civil War. In fact, it was prohibited. So when we talk about delivering on the promise of opportunity, without HBCUs, we would not have had the vehicle to be able to have this conversation today. There are approximately, HBCUs are 3% of public institutions of higher education in this country, all actually. Now, the numbers range from 24 to 16.7% in terms of how many undergraduate students, African American students, we graduate. Started at the high end of 24, and now we're down around that 16.7. That's not as bad as it seems because roughly 1 in every 5 African Americans who gets a baccalaureate degree in this country graduates from an historically black college. That's a lot, considering we're only 3%. Now, what else is important is that more than half of all African American professionals graduate from historically black colleges. More than half of this nation's public school teachers are produced by historically black colleges. Half. That is bedrock mission critical. And nearly 3/4 of all African American dentists and physicians are graduates of historically black colleges. And it's ironic, my husband is not here today because he's going to a celebration for his sister, who is a dentist. And she was the first African-American woman in the United States Army's Dental Corps in 1971, which wasn't that long ago. A proud graduate of Tougaloo and then Meharry. So when we talk about what we're doing as a group, we are talking about a group of institutions that have produced a lot of people who make a difference in this country. Now, what I found very interesting is 9 of the nation's top 10 colleges that produce African Americans with PhDs, HBCUs, top producers. 7 of the top 8 producers of African American baccalaureates, HBCUs. 16 of the top 21 programs that produce black baccalaureates in the biological sciences, HBCUs. And I know that you all know about Xavier College in New Orleans. Xavier is in rare air in terms of the number of people it produces. It alone produced 90, in 2000, it was over 90 graduate applications for medical school. More than Harvard and all Johns Hopkins, all combined. So they figured out what you needed to do, not just to get the students in, but to get them out, to get the applications done, and to get them successful. So when people say to me, 3%, are you worthy? What are you doing? Yeah, my face looks about like it looks right now. I frown up and I look and I think they really don't understand what it is that we're doing. We produce a lot of quality people in this country. And more importantly, when you think about the black faculty at research institutions, half of those black faculty at research institutions, the predominantly majority research institutions, have their baccalaureate degrees from HBCUs. Now, when you stop and think about where is bedrock, where is home, it's at historically black colleges and universities in this country. So I'm excited when we think about what we're doing. Can we do more? Absolutely. Can our numbers be higher? Yes. But relative to the number of institutions we have and what we're doing, and when you think about the number of mathematicians and scientists we produce, that's where you're in that 40 to 50% range. That's a lot, because if we weren't doing that, how many people of color would you see in those professions? And part of the reason is we not only let them in the door, open the door for them, we motivate, we graduate, and we get them out. Because it's HBCUs that are graduating those students, and they're more likely to go into professional programs and graduate from those programs when they've been at historically black colleges. Now, this wasn't part of my question, but what that says is we do more than educate. Our faculty is doing more. We're motivating those students, and if I had a way and I wanted to be a millionaire, if I could patent what it is we do and put it in a bottle, I would. When I retired, I got lots of phone calls from students who went on to law school, who did things, and there was one young woman that was in an orientation class of mine, and I can remember, beautiful girl, straight A average in math. But every day she came to class with glitter eyeshadow on and her flannel pajama bottoms. And we had to have a talk about that. Now, I'm the president of the university who happens to be teaching freshman orientation. And she thought that she needed to draw attention to herself. And I had to say to her, that's not the attention you need. And the class applauded. She had to understand that her head, her natural intelligence, was what needed to be cultivated. 4 years after graduating, and she graduated in 4 years from Kentucky State, and graduated from law school at U of L in 3 years, and works in Georgia now, I got a phone call saying, I still remember. Now, most people would be afraid to tell you, take that eyeshadow off, take those flannel pajamas off, and don't ever come to class with rollers in your hair and a rag around your head. But you have to take the product that you see beyond what might be there, and polish it a bit. Yes. And that's what produces that apple that shines on that tree. And that's what HBCUs do better than anyone else.
Dr. Sias, thank you so much. My next question will be for Dr. Pogue. Dr. Pogue, it's been said in a leadership class that I took that a leader, no matter how effective, has failed if they have not prepared a successor to come after them and build on what they have built. And so the question I have for you is concerning leadership and succession planning. How have our HBCUs been doing when it comes to succession planning? And what can we do better to prepare our future leaders?
Thank you very much. Let me first acknowledge President Burnham and express appreciation to Bowie for sponsoring this event. It's very, very important. I want to congratulate you as well for the celebration of your sesquicentennial. I'm pleased to bring greetings from Cheyney University. Now, Cheyney is acknowledged as the first HBCU. Now, we have a debate every now and then with Lincoln, right?
No one from
I've met a couple from Lincoln. But you know what? It's all good, all right? 1837. And we were still enslaved, millions of us. And we were being whipped and punished and lynched, even if we own a book, not whether we could read a book. But a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated our 178th birthday.